I'm gonna like sort of fangirl out for a little bit. I cannot believe that I have the honor of introducing our final speaker this evening, Jessica Queller. Yeah. So I don't want to take up too much time, but before I moved to New York, I lived in like a really small town in North Carolina. It has like 20,000 people maybe. And my whole life I wanted to live in New York City. And then when I was in law school, somebody was like, well, there's this show, and it's called Gossip Girl, and it's about these really rich Manhattan teenagers, and that's what it's going to be like when you live in New York. And I was like, oh, okay. And I got hooked on it, and in my mind, I was sort of convinced that I was going to be just like Blair Waldorf. I was like, I'm going to have really great clothes, and I'm going to date like an investment banker, and me and my friends are going to go to the box, and that is not what my life is like, but it's a good fantasy, and Jessica is one of the people who brought that fantasy to life for me. So, and I'm going to ask you so many questions about the show, like when you are done. But Jessica is a native New Yorker who now lives in Los Angeles and to become a TV writer. She has written for many amazing TV shows, including Felicity, Gilmore Girls, One Tree Hill, The Carrie Diaries, and she currently is a writer and executive producer for the show Supergirl. She is also the author of the acclaimed memoir, Pretty is What Changes, which chronicles her journey of inheriting a BRCA1 mutation from her mother. She has also written op-ed pieces for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and has spoken extensively about BRCA on television and radio, and is a proud member of the Vassar Center Leadership Council. Jessica has told her story many times, and usually she talks about her mother's death and the subsequent decision to have a prophylactic mastectomy. But this evening, she is going to give us a much different side of life with a BRCA mutation. So I am so thrilled to welcome Jessica to the stage. Thank you so much.
I'm nervous. Thank you so much. I'm already dropping my cards like David Letterman. So, I don't want to hold this, so give me one moment. Every young girl dreams about what her life is going to be like when she grows up. And I happen to be a very dreamy kid with lots of romantic notions. I never dreamed about getting engaged or my wedding day, but I always had this very clear vision of myself pregnant. It was my dream to be a mother. That said, it was also my dream to be a bohemian artist person, so in my fantasy, I was this pregnant earth mother, glowy goddess in a long, flowy dress. And of course, there was always a guy in the picture because it was a love story and the baby was going to be a love child. And throughout my 20s, my life was pretty much going according to plan. I had followed my dreamed-up bohemian path. I was a theater actor, and then I was a writer. I lived in the village. My longtime boyfriend was a playwright. All of a sudden, suddenly, at 31, my life screeched to a halt. I was slammed by real-life traumas one after the next. First, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Then she died. Then I was diagnosed with the BRCA1 mutation, and I decided to remove my breasts in a preemptive strike. And yet the clock was still ticking because I had to have my ovaries removed by the age of 40. One thing they don't often tell you about the BRCA mutation, it takes all the fun and whimsy out of life. BRCA forced me to give up a lot of things, but one thing that I was not willing to give up was this vision of myself pregnant, my dream to bear my own child. But in order to achieve this dream, I had to become steely and focused. My free-spirited personality was gone. Suddenly, I became this type A control freak on a mission. The agenda is to get pregnant. Go. So I'm 37 and a half, I'm single, and I'm working this very demanding job, writing on Gossip Girl. I go to the fertility clinic guru, Dr. Danzer in Beverly Hills, and he says, Jessica, your ovaries are gorgeous. You have the fertility of a 24-year-old. Great! So I dive in. I go to the sperm bank. I research months and months of sperm donors. Then every morning I get up before work and I go to get a sonogram. And then every morning also before work I get a needle and I shoot myself up with fertility drugs just to speed up the process. Of course, because I'm very, very busy, I have to get my business manager to schedule the sperm deliveries to the fertility clinic, which come in these huge space-age metal canisters with dry ice. And every month I go and am inseminated at Dr. Danzer's office all by myself, and every month I weep by myself because, in spite of my gorgeous ovaries, after 8 months of trying, I am not pregnant. Why, Dr. Danzer, why am I not pregnant? Well, he said the most likely answer is stress. So I decide to stop everything. My wonderful, lucrative, stressful job at Gossip Girl, I quit. I decide I'm going to do absolutely nothing but fertility treatments and yoga. So now, I am a 38-year-old, unemployed, aspiring single mother with gorgeous ovaries that seem defective, and time is running out. The week I quit, it just so happens that my dear friend Rebecca is getting married. Now, Rebecca is marrying Harry Sinclair, and Harry is a very handsome, older than us, older gentleman filmmaker from New Zealand. They're actually going to have 2 weddings. The first wedding is going to be in Los Angeles, and the second wedding is going to be in New Zealand because Harry's mother is so old, she's not able to travel anymore. I have to go to both of these weddings because instead of having bridesmaids, Rebecca is having muses, and I am one of them. So the first wedding is this bohemian affair in Topanga Canyon. And I am one of 3 muses, and in case you think I'm making this up, believe it or not, one of the other muses, Winsome, is in the room today, so she can tell you that this is all factual. So Winsome and I and a third muse are barefoot in Topanga wearing feather headdresses, and we are reciting poems and we are singing songs, and we are also going to act in a play at the reception that was written by Rebecca, in which Rebecca plays a mermaid, Harry, her groom, plays a sailor lost at sea, and I play a mermaid in waiting named Mimsy Whimsy. And the audience is, they're handed white cardboard cutouts, pasted on a stick, of boats and birds that the audience is supposed to wave at a certain point during the play. So I am in this very bad Wes Anderson movie, but for the first time in ages, I feel like my old, whimsical, creative self, and I am downing vodka and totally into it. There's also original music in this play, which is composed by Harry's nephew, Isaac Sinclair. So Harry is older than we are. Harry's brother is even older than he is, and his nephew, Isaac, is 25 years old. And Isaac is this broody rock star boy who is a dead ringer for Brad Pitt, only the Tiny Toon version, meaning he's my height, he's very slight, and he's in this leather jacket, and he's with his acoustic guitar. And Isaac happens to be a perfumier who lives in Paris, though he's currently doing a stint in Brazil. So later after the play, I am very, very drunk, and I find myself making out with Isaac Sinclair, who is 13 years younger than I am. And we don't have sex. However, we do hook up, and I find myself that night sleeping in his arms on Rebecca's couch in Topanga. I forgot to mention that right before the wedding, Harry's mother, older mother, dies. So she was in her late 90s, so it was sad, but it was okay. But so the day after the Los Angeles wedding, Harry, Rebecca, and my new boyfriend Isaac have to get on a plane and fly to New Zealand. So while they're in New Zealand, Rebecca is texting me, "Oh, Jessica, Isaac is crazy about you. He's very serious about you. He's told the whole family about you. No pressure, but if you do marry Isaac, well, you'll be my niece." Now, I know this is all absurd. Believe me, I do realize it's absurd. However, Rebecca then says, "Oh, Isaac is coming back. He's going to be in Los Angeles for one night on his way back to Brazil. So the 4 of us are going to go out for a double date at La Poubelle." And I'm like, I'm done controlling my life. I'm just going to go with the flow. Whatever. Okay, what the hell. Then Rebecca lands in Los Angeles, and she texts me, "I just had a wedding. I flew 12 hours. I had a funeral. I flew another 12 hours. There was no fucking way that I'm going on a double date tonight." And I was like, "Of course, I understand. Say goodbye to Isaac. Give him my best." And she's like, "Oh my God, no. You can't cancel on Isaac. He'd be crushed. I'm dropping him and his guitar off at La Poubelle. Just make sure he gets to the airport tomorrow." So now this is my second night with Isaac Sinclair. We go out to dinner. We drink more vodka. And he says, "I love you, I love you." And I'm like, "Isaac, that is incredibly sweet, but we've never had a conversation sober. How can you love me?" And he's like, "I'm a perfumier, I'm a nose, I operate on another plane. I don't need words, I have discernment." And then he says, you must come to Brazil. You must come meet me in Carnival. And I'm like, well, listen, Isaac. I just quit my job because I have something called the BRCA mutation, and I can't have a boyfriend right now. I don't have time to have a boyfriend right now, and I don't have time to go to Carnival because I'm too busy going to Dr. Danzer's office every day, getting fertility treatments, and I have to have a baby right away. So here's a memoir I wrote on the BRCA mutation, and take it with you on the plane. And if after you read the book you're still interested, give me a call. Of course, I never expect to hear from this 25-year-old boy again, but he does read the book on the plane, and he calls me when he gets off the plane, and the first thing he says is, your writing is terrible. The words are so plain, there's no style to it, I don't understand. And I was like, well, I thought the story kind of spoke for itself. I was going for a Joan Didion kind of simple thing, and he's like, it doesn't matter, I didn't need to read the book. I knew everything I needed to know at first sight. Cease and desist, only have babies with me. And so now I'm thinking, I have a light bulb moment, oh my God. It's the ghost of my dead mother sending me a live human being, the one thing I haven't tried. And Isaac had said, if you won't come to Brazil, I'll come back and visit you again in Los Angeles. So I said, when exactly did you say you wanted to come to California? Okay, so now Isaac knew everything. He knew I had to get pregnant right away. He knew I would not use protection. What he did not know is that I scheduled his trip exactly during my ovulation window. And what he did not know is that I was shooting myself up with fertility drugs in preparation for his trip. So now I go to Dr. Danzer's office, and I start freaking out because, you know, ovulation is not an exact science. So I'm like, is it going to work out? He arrives on Friday, and what's the window? And he's here for a week. And Dr. Danzer says, well, yes, your ovulation is Friday, and so if you're with the young man when he gets off the plane that evening, it will work out. And I'm like, off the plane, gets off the plane. I've never actually had sex yet with Isaac. I mean, I assume it's not going to be a problem, but right off the plane, okay. And he said, what I advise is that you come in that morning at 6 before the young man arrives, get inseminated with the donor sperm to be sure, and then see what happens. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't handle this. My friend Kelly's in the audience because I was calling her freaking out. What do I do? The boy is coming with romantic notions. I mean, he's coming as a romance, and it's so gross. I'm going to have fake someone else's sperm inside of me. I can't do it. And Kelly, this was not in my speech, but Kelly was like, these drugs are dangerous. They can be a cancer risk. I don't care about Isaac. You have to do what you have to do, Jessica. And I spoke to my other friends, and finally I decided I can't. That's just too far for me. I'm gonna gamble on the perfumier. And Dr. Danzer said, well, in the worst case scenario, come in at 6 a.m. Saturday morning. That's within the 24 hours, and get inseminated with donor. So, okay, I had a backup plan. And I think he's flying all the way across the world to see me. It can't be that hard for him to have sex with me when he gets off the plane. So I pick Isaac and his guitar up at the airport. Not only does he have no intention of having sex with me that night, he has made his own plan. He tells me that he's nervous and he hasn't slept in 3 days, and he knows himself. He is so tired. If he puts his head on the pillow, he'll just pass out. So let's go to dinner, have a bottle of wine, and tomorrow he'll be normal. And I'm like, internally, tomorrow, there is no tomorrow. Tomorrow is forget about tomorrow. But I don't want to tell him the exact problem because I feel like I don't want to kill all the romance of the situation. So I figure I'll just bring him back to the apartment, and somehow I'll be able to seduce him, and somehow this is going to work out. But I bring him to the apartment, and he has made me a custom perfume, which he gives me. He has written me a song, which he plays for me on his guitar, and he goes ahead to continue to play every single song in his repertoire on his guitar till 2 in the morning when I finally start weeping. And he's like, what's wrong with you? And I said, well, remember that thing I told you about why I couldn't come to Carnival and why, you know, I quit my job and how I had to have a baby right away? Well, it's actually now, like this second, and I totally get it if you don't want to be a part of this, but if you don't, I have to go to Dr. Danzer's office at 6 in the morning and get inseminated. And I also told him I was filled with fertility drugs, at which he was very blunt, as you know from his response to my book. He's like, I was wondering why you had a beer belly all of a sudden, bloated from the drugs. But other than that, he was very sweet. And he said, you should have told me. I would have flown in several days earlier. But at this point, it's in the middle of the night, and he is 25, and he gets performance anxiety, as anyone of any age would. But he doesn't want to let me down, so He manages to get it up, and we start to have sex, but as promised, he passes out before the deed is done, naked, snoring in my bed. I am having a nervous breakdown thinking this is the craziest thing I've ever done, and I've done a lot of crazy things. At 6 a.m. the next morning, I go to Dr. Danzer's and I get inseminated by the donor. I get home, Isaac is chain smoking, he's pacing, he feels badly, it's very awkward. I'm like, we have a week left. I can't ship him out. We have to make the best of this. So I said, let's forget about fertility, let's start over. I'll get us a hotel room in Santa Monica, let's just have a romantic time and just try to forget all of this ever happened. So the next night we go to Santa Monica and we do have sex without protection. We play boyfriend and girlfriend for a week, and then he goes back to Brazil, and I go to New Zealand for the second wedding with Rebecca. So while I am in New Zealand, I take a pregnancy test, and guess what? I'm pregnant. The day I find out I'm pregnant, I am out to dinner with Isaac's sisters and parents, and I am taking secret photographs of them, thinking they could be the grandparents of my unborn child. I get back home, and Isaac just wants to know, did my parents embarrass me? What happened? And I was like, oh, they were so lovely. Don't worry, but I'm pregnant. So I think Isaac thought I couldn't get pregnant because I tried so much. But anyway, sweet as always, he steps up to the plate, says he's going to go with it. We try to make it work as a romance for another while. We have a few more trips, and then I'm like, he's this impulsive boy, 13 years younger than me, who lives in Paris, and although it's a romantic idea, I have no way of making a living in Paris, and it's not going to happen. So I break up with Isaac before I know that who the father is. During my amnio, I get a paternity test, and it is a 99.9% match with the donor. Sophie is now 7. She is not Isaac's, but it's not lost on me that I had to let go of my control freak, controlling persona and become my whimsical, wacky, creative self again in order to make my dream happen and have a baby. Now I am living both of my dreams. I am a mother, and I'm some version of a bohemian artist person. And my daughter is a wild child who likes to stay up with me to midnight every weekend. She prefers dessert for breakfast, and she often dances on the roof of my friend Rosemary's car whenever she can get away with it. And anyway, the BRCA gene tried to knock the whimsy out of my life, but I am proud to say it didn't get the best of me. Thank you so much.